Senate will come to order for this Friday, March 5th. Roll call.
Roll call, day 14, Friday, March 5th. Anderson?
Here.
Baldwin?
Here.
Beitman?
Here.
Boner? Bouchard?
Here.
Case?
Present.
Cooper?
Here.
Driscoll?
Here.
Ellis? French?
Here.
Murphy?
Here.
Guru?
Here.
Hicks?
Here.
Hutchings?
Here.
James?
Here.
Kinsky?
Here.
Kolb?
Present.
Cost?
Here.
Landon?
Here.
McEwen?
Here.
Nethercott? Pappas?
Here.
Perkins?
Here.
Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Scott?
Here.
Steinmetz? Wasberger?
Here.
President Dockstetter?
Here.
30 present.
Pastor Sells.
Good morning. Please join with me as we pray. Heavenly Father, so thankful that we can be here today. Lord, we're thankful for all that you've given us as a state and as individuals. Lord, we would pray specifically today. As I think through these things, I just pray, Lord, that you would give these senators wisdom according to the knowledge of your will. Father, I pray that you would give them the ability to make decisions that would be pleasing. Father, I pray that you would strengthen them with your power so that you can give them steadfastness, so that you can give them patience. Lord, I just give thanks to you that I have the opportunity to be here this week and the opportunity to represent you here in this way. Father, I thank you so much. I just give you such thanks for the joyous salvation you've given me, the redemption of my sins. So Lord, we thank you for this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Senator Rothfuss, would you honor us by leading us in the pledge?
Absolutely, Mr. President. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wave off. Don't make an error.
I'm sorry.
One moment, please. So let's do this. Pastor Sells, it's tradition. We present you with a Wyoming coin at the end of the week. It's a tradition that we present you with a Wyoming coin at the end of the week. We're readjusting to the new session. I'll personally deliver that coin to your church and to you, okay? Thank you so much, and we appreciate you joining us in the Senate this week to offer prayer each and every day. All the best to you and your family and your congregation. Thank you. We have some privileges of the floor. I believe Senator Rothfuss was the first to stand. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may I have the privilege of the floor?
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want the Senate to welcome our good old friend over here. Senator Kit Jennings is joining us today. Senator Jennings was in the Senate when I first joined. Many of us served with him for a number of years, and he was always a good friend to me, a good colleague. We laughed a lot. We disagreed far more, and continue to do so today. I always enjoy my opportunities to visit with Senator Jennings and hope the Senate will give a warm round of applause and welcome him today. Thank you.
Senator Jennings, offer us a word if you would, please.
Thank you,
Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues and friends. And oh goodness, have the faces changed out there. I would like to take the pastor's prayer as a motion and second that motion, because all of us need that help from the Lord. And Lord knows you guys have a lot of hard work in front of you. Good to see you all again. And I love your new digs. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Back. And we like our new digs too. Senator Landon, were you up for privilege? No, okay. Who else do we have? Senator Cooper, did I see you up? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor, please.
Please do.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to have the members of this body join me in congratulating Miss Kinley Anderson of Tinsley. She's the daughter of Commissioner Anderson and School Board member Sarah Anderson. Kinley is the 2021 winner of the VFW Voice of Democracy for the state of Wyoming, and she'll move forward to the national contest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Further privileges. All right. Reading correction approval of the journal. Will the reading clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your journal committee reports the journal of March 4, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. New business. Please. Oh, sure.
I have privilege of the floor for
Chairman
just a
Perkins,
moment.
go ahead.
I just wanted to congratulate our committee, our journal committee chairman and the ranking member of the journal committee on 5 straight days of having this journal accepted without exception. So anyway,
Very
thank you.
impressive.
Yes.
Good job, Senator Cole. Announcements, we are still using University of Wyoming Family Practices for medical care. Noting our chaplain of the day, Pastor Sean Sells, and thanking him. Today in Wyoming history, in 1895, the first refinery in Wyoming begins operations in where? Casper. For our Natrona County folks, it was located on the site east of Center Street and near the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad tracks. The plant could produce, get this, could produce 100 barrels of lubricants per day, ranging from light cylinder oil to heavy grease. Quote for the day, it's kind of a short abbreviated sentence from Jack Welch: change before you have to. Session status, next week we begin the budget week, folks. All right, we come to that point of confirmation of appointments. We're at that order of business, Senate confirmation of appointments. Majority Floor Leader.
I move that the Senate resolve itself into open executive session.
All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Will the reading clerk please read the entire list of nominees to Wyoming's boards, commissions, and agency director positions?
Aeronautics Commission, Anya Bendel, Steve Meyer, Randy Harrop. Board of Agriculture, George Larry Krause, James Rogers. Hadley Pape, Landon Hoffer. Arts Council, Holly Turner, Stephen Trefferman, Adam Harris. Board of Barber Examiners, Corey Pillen. Business Council, Mike Easley, Kim DeVore, Aaron Moore, Jason Kinsler. Children's Trust Fund Board, Amber Nicole Barnhart. Community College Commission, Dr. Jackie Fries, Julia Newman, Micah Wyatt, Megan Getz. Cultural Trust Fund Board, Mary Hopkins. Dental Examiners, Byron Kilpat, DDS, Scott Hofek, DDS. Education, Amy Pearson, Mark Mathern, Ellen Ostermeyer, Ken Closton. Enhanced and Improved Oil Recovery Commission, Kenneth Hendricks, Robert Bob King, Eli Bebout. Environmental Quality Council, Marjorie Bedessom, PhD, JD Radakovich, Ryan Green, Stan Blake. Equalization, Dave Delacath. Game and Fish, Kenneth Roberts, Mark Jolovich, Ashley Lundeval. Gaming Commission, Bob Davis, Jenny Wildcat, Dwayne Pacheco, Cactus Cavello. Geological Survey Board, Benjamin Schiffer. Industrial Siting Council, Brenda Schaldweiler, PhD, Susan Clinch. Judicial Conduct and Ethics, Ruth Ann Petroff, Kent Noble. Livestock Board, John Eversole, Mary Owens, Hugh Hageman. Medicine, Valerie Mockensturm. Mental Health Professions Licensing Board, Kelly Heenan. Mining Council, Michael Bird. Occupational Health and Safety Commissions, Dennis Shepard, Douglas Thomas, Larry Kraft. Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, Jimmy Earl Goolsby. Outfitters and Professional Guides, James Shell. Parks and Cultural Resources Commission, Robert Terrell, Julie Greer, John Keck. Parole, Lori Garrison, Richard Scott Galkey. Pharmacy, Tom Mertens, Brenda Upton. Professional Geologists, Andrew Finley, Janet Dewey, Graham Finley. Board of Psychology, Edith Esther Seville, Doctor of Psychology. Public Service Commission, Mary Throne, Chris Petrie. Real Estate Commission, Karen Valentine Pond, Tim Bradley. Retirement System Board, Vicki Colgan, Tom Chapman, Dr. Leslie Travers, John Lummis, Robert Bob Liebrecht. School Facilities Commission, Joni Katchelhofer, Terry Livingston. Tourism Board, Tony O'Brien, Michael Keller, Sean Parker. Transportation Commission, Greg Venable, Susan Holmes, Mark Hughes. Unemployment Insurance Commission, John L. Freeman. UW Board of Trustees, Michelle Sullivan, John McKinley, Elizabeth Greenwood, Carol Linton. UW Energy Resources Council, Charlene Russell. Veterinary Medicine, Brittany Wallish. Water Development Commission, Larry Suker, Ronald E. Cayley Jr., Leonard Lee Craig, Robert Bob Choma, Lisa Anselmi Dalton. Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Account, Esther Wagner, Jacelyn Downey, Kim Floyd. Agency Directors, Office of Administrative Hearings, J.C. Demers. Budget Department, Kevin Hibbard. Department of Corrections, Dan Shannon. Office of the Guardian Ad Litem, Joseph Belcher. State Construction Department, Mel Muldrow.
Thank you. Does any member wish to remove any from the consent list? Senator Case.
Mr. President, I don't wish to remove anyone, but I wish to address the appointments.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I'm about to do something I've never done before. I'm going to vote no on the consent list, Mr. President. I'm going to vote no on the consent list because, not because I disagree with the governor, but because I disagree with the actions of the Senate. And Mr. President, it's very difficult to lead a great state like Wyoming. But I think we have to be inclusive, Mr. President. The most important thing is to have all the citizens together as we try to move Wyoming forward in this century with all these horrendous problems that face us, perhaps unique in our time. There were members that were removed from the original list, Mr. President. There were colleagues of mine. They happened to be of a different party, but I watched their actions in this as they did their work. There was a young woman from Lander that I supported for an appointment to a commission in Wyoming. I worked very hard to get the governor to recognize her talents. She happens to be of the other party, not of the majority party. We're at a time where there is an unprecedented majority in this Senate. I actually have learned that it's not unprecedented because if you walk through the doorway there, on the right-hand side, you'll see that every member of that original Senate was a member of the Democratic Party. I wonder what their appointments look like. We have to lead. We have to lead in a manner that is inclusive. And Mr. President, we won't always be in the majority. We won't always have this supermajority. but we all will always be from Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Grue.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too am a no vote today for a lot of the same reasons. And I guess I'm not going to belabor the point, but I'll just leave you with a thought. Sometimes the dissenting voice hits a little hard on your ears. I understand that. Sometimes it tugs a little bit at the fiber of your very being. I know, I hear it a lot. As a small minority in a supermajority room, I hear it a lot, but I try to listen and I try to learn. I try to understand and I try to grow. Sometimes I help. I've learned a lot from a lot of the people in this room. And I don't think it would be too unfair for this group every once in a while to maybe put a dissenting voice on a board, on a commission, maybe an alien voice, maybe a minority voice. But you know what? There are folks in this state who believe them, people in this state who agree with them. And together, we can work together and I think do better than we can when we divide. And I think we did a little bit of dividing this week. I know some of you feel very strongly about the way it all happened and that can be argued. But I just want to let you know, I've learned a lot from listening to dissenting voices. And I think a lot of folks maybe could do the same. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to say something a little different. I really liked the way the process went a little better to me this time. I didn't like the first part of it, just putting people on a list and hey, you're going to nominate them. I thought it was important for each member to go through the list and hear from the body, the other members, what they felt good or bad about a person. I didn't pay attention to parties. I sat in on the committees, the hearings, and I learned from those. These are job interviews. I looked at them like that. So there will be some people I'll vote for and there will be some people I won't, because I saw them in person and I had a chance to listen. And I think with a lot of things in here, we depend on our fellows to give us or tell us the truth about certain issues that we may not know about: water, agriculture, ranching, whatever. I need to trust you to give me truth so I can make an informed decision. And I think that was done. And I just want to say I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I think some of the remarks may give the impression that there's too much of a partisan aspect here to some of these appointments. And Mr. President, I think the evidence is that is not true. Mr. President, I think our governor has done an excellent job within the constraints imposed by the statute. You know, you have to have representation from around the state. You have to have a member from a certain appointment district or judicial district. And that does constrain the governor's appointment abilities. And sometimes there's professional requirements as well. There's a number of requirements, including on occasion party splits. But where the appointment has been unconstrained and to the extent he can within the constraints, I think the governor has reached out to seek the best that the state has to offer. And I would note in particular on the consent list, Mr. President, we have a reappointment, the Public Service Commission, which is a member of committee number 7 I work with quite a bit. And I see the name for reappointment. of the governor's political opponent in the last election. And I think it is a great credit to this governor and to the state of Wyoming that he was willing to reach out to his political opponent because he could recognize the talent she had. And I would assure the Senate she has done an excellent job at the Public Service Commission. And I think that's an example, is a very positive example of how the appointment process has worked, Mr. President. And I think we can vote for these nominees with confidence that our governor has done the best job he could.
Thank you, Senator. Further discussion on the confirmations? Senator Driscoll?
Everyone's done.
Well, just a moment. All right. Were you going to comment on a conferee or?
I was not.
Okay.
Back to script.
All right. So at this point,
I move for adoption of the governor's appointments as read and that the Senate vote collectively as a consent list consisting of all appointments.
again, we'll repeat. Does any member wish to remove any name from the consent list? Having none, we are now voting on the consent list. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson,
Aye.
aye. Baldwin, aye. Beitman, aye. Boner, aye. Bouchard, no. Case, no. Cooper, aye. Driscoll, aye. Ellis, aye. French, aye. Furphy, aye. Guru, no. Hicks, aye. Hutchings, no. James, no. Kinsky,
Aye.
aye. Kolb, aye. Cost, aye. Landon, aye. McEwen, aye. Nethercott, aye. Pappas, aye. Perkins, aye. Rothfuss, no. Salazar, aye. Schuler, aye. Scott, aye. Steinmetz, aye. Wasserberger, aye. President Dockstader, aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the consent list, 24 aye, 6 no.
By your vote, the appointments on the consent list have been approved. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of the Investment Funds Committee appointments in accordance with Wyoming Statute 9-4-720 as amended in 2020.
Will the reading clerk please read the names submitted?
Investment Funds Committee, Max Carroll, Tom Chapman III, Russell Reed.
Absent objection, we will vote on these two nominees on a consent list. Chief Clerk, please call the roll on the IFC appointments.
Roll call on IFC appointment consent list. Anderson,
Aye.
aye. Baldwin, aye. Beitman, aye. Boner, aye. Bouchard, aye. Case, aye. Cooper, aye. Driscoll,
Aye.
aye. Ellis, aye. French, aye. Furphy, aye. Guru, aye. Hicks, aye. Hutchings, aye. James, no. Kinsky,
Aye.
aye. Cole, aye. Cost, aye. Landon, aye. McEwen, aye. Nethercott, aye. Pappas, aye. Perkins,
Aye.
aye. Rothfuss, aye. Salazar, aye. Schuler, aye. Scott, aye. Steinmetz, aye. Wasserberger, aye. President Dockstader, Aye.
Go ahead.
Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed on the IFC appointments, 29 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, both investment funds committee appointees have been confirmed. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of the Director of the Department of Audit pursuant to Wyoming Statute 9-2-2003B as interim director.
Will the reading clerk please read the name submitted?
Department of Audit Interim Director Fred Reif.
Chief Clerk, please call the roll on the Director of the Department of Audit appointment.
Department of Audit roll call. Director Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Whitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. James. No. Kinsky.
Aye.
Aye. Kolb. Aye. Cost. Aye. Landon. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Perkins. Perkins.
Aye.
Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Wasserberger. Aye. President Dockstader. Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. 29 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, the appointment of the interim director of the Department of Audit has been confirmed. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate dissolve itself from open executive session.
All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Thank you. Motion carried. I want to thank the chairman, committee secretaries, and all of everyone who helped on this for their work in the hearing process as we move this through the Senate. Reports from standing committees.
March 4, 2021. Mr. President, Committee Number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 150, Death Penalty Repeal, respectfully reports back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Case, Pappas, and Schuler. No, Senator James. Senator Case, Chairman. March 4, 2021, Mr. President, Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 157, Property Rights, Limitation on Local Authority, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. Senator Boner, Chairman. March 5, 2021, Mr. President, Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 130, Charter Schools, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Ellis, Salazar, and Scott. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Scott, Chairman. March 5, 2021, Mr. President, Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 74, Athletic Trainer Revisions, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. Senator Scott, Chairman.
Thank you. Bills on second reading. Senate File 3, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 3, Automated Vehicle Identification Systems.
There is an amendment. Reading clerk, read in the amendment.
Senate File 3, second reading amendment number 1, page 3, line 2, delete.
Senator Guru.
Mr. President, thank you. After talking to some of my more learned colleagues and more seasoned, I would like to withdraw second reading amendment number 1 at this time so I can further consult with the body.
Thank you. Absent objection, amendment withdrawn. Senate File 7, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 7, Autonomous Vehicles.
There are no amendments. Senate File 7, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 23, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 23, public meetings, executive sessions for security plans.
There are no amendments. Senate File 23, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 25, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 25, animal impound proceedings, bond and disposition.
There are no amendments. Senate File 25, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 35, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 35, State Budget Department.
Senate File 35, there are no amendments. Senate File 35, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 47, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 47, Clinical Laboratory Regulation, Direct to Consumer Exception.
Senate File, there are no amendments. Senate File 47, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 76, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 76, Broadband Development Programs Amendments.
Senate, there are no amendments. Senate File 76, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 85, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 85, Property Tax Reporting and Exemption.
There are no amendments. Senate File 85, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered.
Mr. President,
Mr. Senator Anderson.
on Senate File 3, the maker of the amendment withdrew the amendment, but did we dispose of Senate File 3?
For the record, we will. Senate File 3, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bills on 3rd and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list?
List. I move 3rd reading consent list, which is as follows. Senate File 4, Airport Districts. Senate File 17, Governmental Publication Requirements. Senate File 34, Born Alive Infant Means of Care. Senate File 70, Fingerprinting Fees. Senate File 71, Strategic Amendments and Projects Account Repeal. Senate File 72, Financial Counsel and Reporting Budget Reductions. Senate File 89, Public Utility Safety Lights.
Would anyone like any of these bills removed from the consent list?
Do your work for you. Now you don't get it.
One moment, please, Chairman. Clarification, Majority Floor Leader, you read Senate File 4. That's been removed because it has an amendment. That will not be on the consent list. And I'll
Thank you, Mr.
I'll
President.
clarify that when I reread the list.
Perfect. Yeah, no, my list, I'm going off the published list, and that's who was on it. So I apologize. It's not there. My list has.
Chairman, did you want, okay. Senator Cost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like 17 pulled for discussion.
Senate File 17 has been removed from the consent list. Any further? Having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 34, Senate File 70, Senate File 71, Senate File 72, Senate File 89. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list. Anderson,
Aye.
Baldwin, Beitman, Boner, Bouchard, Case, Cooper, Driscoll, Ellis, French, Furphy, Guru, Hicks, Hutchings, James, Kinsky,
Aye.
Kolb, Cost, Landon, McEwen, Nethercott, Pappas, Perkins, Rothfuss, Salazar, Schuler, Scott, Steinmetz, Wasserberger, President Dockstader. On the consent list, 30 aye. Senate File 34. Are there any changes? Case? Aye to no. Rothfuss? Aye to no. Pappas? Aye to no. Steinmetz? Aye to no. Guru? Aye to no.
Senator Steinmetz, would you like to? Thank you.
Steinmetz? No to aye.
Thank you. Senator Landon, did you catch that for him? We're back on track now.
Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 34, 26 aye, 4 no. Senate File 70. Are there any changes?
Kinsky, aye to no.
Kinsky, aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. James, aye to no. Rothfuss, aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Salazar, aye to no. French, aye to no. Kolb, aye to no. Steinmetz, aye to no. Perkins, aye to no. Cooper, aye to no. Driscoll, aye to no. Nethercott, aye to no. Dockstader, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 70, 14 aye, 16 no. Senate File 71. Are there any changes? Rothfuss, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 71, 29 aye, 1 no. Senate File 72. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 72, 30 aye. Senate File 89. Are there any changes? Scott? Aye to no. Case? No. Cooper? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 89, 27 aye, 3 no.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majorities of the members elected to the Senate, Senate Files 34, 71, 72, and 89 have passed the Senate. Senate File 70, having failed to receive an affirmative vote of the majority of members of elected to the Senate, Senate File, please. No. No, but thank you for checking. Senate File 70, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 70 has failed to pass the Senate. Bills on third reading, moving back to Senate File 4. Senate File 4, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 4, Airport District, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to aeronautics.
There is an amendment. Reading clerk, read in the amendment.
Senate File 4, third reading amendment, number 1, page 7, line 19 after.
We're on the amendment. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I would move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 4. And first of all, Mr. President, I do want to apologize. This is a rather substantive amendment. We normally don't do that on third reading. I have to admit, we got caught a little bit in the technology. Night before last, we ran late till about 6 o'clock at night, and we were trying to put this amendment together on your behalf in time for second reading. We just didn't make it. And so hopefully with your deference, the Senate will consider what the good senator from Sweetwater County and I put our heads together to try to hopefully make the bill a little bit better. And what we do in this amendment, we are basically requiring that the airport district board would be elected. We are now in this amendment requiring that they receive approval from the appointing agency. That can be either a municipality or a county commission. That district board, I think that can actually benefit these airport districts. If they receive the approval of the county commission, that stamp is going to carry a lot of weight if they go forward into an election. That gives us assurance on two different fronts. And to the good tall senator from Natrona County, we had a good debate throughout the readings about the length of the sunset date. The reason that we had extended that out quite a little ways, you'll remember, is that there's all kinds of different funding streams that help these airports. And some of them are contingent upon that extra timing. We can talk a little bit more about it, but we did drop from 12 years down to 10 years. So we've made it a little bit tighter. That's the three things that this amendment does, fellow senators. In my mind, I think it tightens it up. I think it helps the bill. And Mr. President, I'd be glad to answer any questions, and certainly the senator for Sweetwater County might want to weigh in. Thank you.
Questions on the amendment? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I like the amendment, but I'm confused with part of the discussion. So I just need a little help here. Is when I go through and we bring in the new language in subsection C, I see that it now has to, the airport board has to come before those governing entities and present their budget, but I don't see anywhere where it says those entities have to approve that budget. And that's a substantial difference between just presenting your budget. So am I misreading that? Is it just we've set up a process that they now have to come before all those entities to get a review of the budget? Or is it an actual approval of the budget? Just if I could have some help with that, Mr. President.
Collect a few more questions and discussion for the sponsor. Any more questions or discussions before we go back to, okay, go ahead, Senator French.
Yeah, just the sponsor of the amendment or the good Senator Landon, clarify that the board will be elected, but the county commissioners approve. I'm a bit confused on that end of it. Does the county commissioners approve of the elected board, or if somebody could straighten that out for me, please?
Okay. Further questions or discussion? Further questions or discussion? Let's go back to Senator Landon.
Mr. President, to my friend from Carbon County, I'm not sure I'm tracking that either. I know what the intention was, and maybe we didn't quite look at that properly. What I was going to ask, Mr. President, is if we could lay this bill back for one day, and we'll go back to work on that so that the amendment meets our intention. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Absent objection, Senate File 4 will be laid back one day. Thank you, Senator. Continuing, there are additional amendments. Oh, we're laying back. Okay, sorry. Senate File 17, will the reading clerk? Okay, we got that sorted out. We're going to move to Senate File 6 unless Senator Roth would like to say, okay. Senate File 6, third reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 6, Public Works Contracting Requirements Amendments, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to public works.
There are amendments. Reading clerk, read in First Amendment.
Senate File 6, third reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 2, delete.
Someone like to move that amendment? Oh, there you are, Senator Nethercott. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 6 and ask for your favorable consideration after I divide it. Mr. President, I'd like to divide this amendment at lines 1 through 12 is Division 1, and lines 13 through 15 are Division 2.
Divisible, but would you repeat it one more time for the body?
Division 1 is lines 1 through 12. Division 2 is lines 13 through 15.
To proceed now with Division 1?
Yes, Mr. President, I would ask you to vote no on Division 1. I think this is a deletion that was inaccurate based on some quick and fast work, and I would ask you to vote no. It, I think, removes some important provisions of the bill, which is certainly not intended. So I'd stand for any questions, but ask you to vote no.
Question being called on Division 1 to Senate File on first reading amendment to Senate File 6. Go ahead. Third reading amendment to Senate File 6. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay.
No.
Failed. On Division 2, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good senators, I'd ask for your favorable consideration on Division 2. This makes some technical corrections, ensuring that those horizontal projects that we talked about before are not subject to these new regulations. So YDOT is still exempted, and so is the airport districts, recognizing that they fall under a separate regulation. So it's not that they're They don't have them. It's just under this particular bill. This does not apply to them. So it's a technical correction and ask for your favorable consideration on Division 2.
Questions on Division 2? Is there a question being called on Division 2? Question being called, Division 2, third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 6. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Next amendment. Reading clerk, read in the amendment.
Senate File 6, third reading amendment number 2, page 5, line 1, after.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 6 and ask the bodies to vote aye. What this does is, we talked a little bit about this back actually during even the committee of the whole work, but what this does is this goes into the bottom of page 4 is where the new language starts, and the top of page 5. And this is about if a public entity accepts a bid that is not the lowest bid for a public work, shall provide a report in writing to the state construction department or transportation. And so we've got this language in here. I think we modified a little bit, but ultimately they have to justify why they did not accept this lowest bid. What this does is comes in after what the amendment does is it comes in on page 5 on line 1, and after the words lowest bid inserts from a responsible qualified bidder. And what the intent of this is just to clarify that it's not just any bid, it's not just the lowest bid, but there's this concept that you've got to have a bid from a qualified bidder. There can be bids that are non-responsive for any number of reasons. The bidder may have an absolute horrible history of completion on time. They may be financially just about extinct. They may have submitted a bid that didn't comply with specifications. There may be a number of reasons. So usually as you go through, there's this process where you identify responsive bidders, qualified bidders, and then they make the bid. And so the purpose of this, and I think the intent is, and talking with the chairman of judiciary and others in there, the intent is that when this lowest bid from a qualified or responsive bidder, which is why you insert this word responsive qualified bidder, when that is not accepted, if it's a responsive qualified bidder, then the general rule is that should be accepted. However, even then, there sometimes are a few exceptions, and that's what this just clarifies, that if we're rejecting the lowest bid from a qualified responsive bidder, then they need to justify why that lower bid is being rejected. And there may be good reasons for that, but that's the purpose of this, is to clarify that it's not just the lowest bid, but the lowest responsive bid. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott, questions and discussion now.
Mr. President, I think my distinguished colleague meant to say responsible, not responsive, because the bidder can be responsive without being responsible.
All right. Further questions or discussion? Go ahead, Senator Perkins.
For my second time, responsible. Thank you.
All right, question being called on third reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 6. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment has passed. Back on the bill. Are you ready for the question? Senate File 79, Senate File 6, having been been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will read the roll. Call the roll.
Senate File 6, roll call. Anderson?
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinsky?
Aye.
Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Cost? I, Landon. I, McEwen. I, Nethercott. I, Pappas. I, Perkins. I, Rothfuss. I, Salazar. I, Schuler. I, Scott.
Aye.
I, Steinmetz. I, Wasserberger. I, President Dockstader.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 6, 30 aye.
Senate File 6, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 6 has passed the Senate. Senate File 79, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 79, Medicaid billing for school-based services, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to school finance.
There is an amendment.
Senate File 79, third reading amendment number 1, page 1, line 5, after.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File
79.
79. Thank you. Medicaid billing broad-based school services, and ask the body's favorable consideration. Once again, coming back again with the a couple things happened late. This comes back in and doesn't add, it keeps the appropriation exactly the same, but what we've got here is talking to the department, as they went back and after they testified to the committee, initially, my understanding was that this was likely to be a contracted position, but as they've kind of fleshed this out and do this a little bit, what this is this appropriation will add one full-time position in the Department of Health. And the purpose of this is then to conglomerate and aggregate these claims and help aid all school districts as we make these submissions to the federal government for return of this money. And so I think as they've looked at it a little bit further, they believe that this full-time position is needed, and it doesn't change the appropriation, doesn't increase the appropriation, but that's what's been brought to us from the department and the governor's office, and visiting with some other people who on the other side have been involved in this, and so I believe that it's appropriate, and just would ask for your favorable consideration, and would stand for any questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Questions or discussion on the amendment? Questions or discussion on the amendment? Do I hear the question? Question being called. All those in favor of the amendment? This is third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 79. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, the amendment has passed. We are back on the bill. Senate File 79. Are you ready for the question? Senate File 79, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Roll call on Senate File 79. Anderson.
Aye.
I, Baldwin. I, Beitman. I, Boner. I, Bouchard. I, Case. I, Cooper. I, Driscoll. I, Ellis. I, French. I, Furphy. I, Guru. I, Hicks. I, Hutchings. No, James. I, Kinski.
Aye.
I, Cole. I, Cost. I, Landon. I, McEwen. I, Nethercott. I, Pappas. I, Perkins. I, Rothfuss. No. Salazar. I, Schuler. I, Scott. I, Steinmetz. I, Wasserberger. I, President Dockstader. Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 79, 28 aye, 2 no.
Senate File 79, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 79 has passed the Senate. Now Now back up, Senate File 17, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 17, Governmental Publication Requirements, sponsored by the Corporations Committee, an act relating to governmental publication requirements.
There are no amendments. Senator Kosk.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had some great debate on this and a couple of amendments didn't make it. I just wanted to remind everybody that however, I do agree that we need to work towards a transition, but I think now's not the time. I think that we need to honor our newspaper prints for those people that really look forward to that. We've got a number of people that testified to the fact that they've had people respond on it. I think it's a valuable place out there. For those that struggle with not wanting the newspaper to pay the subscription, it's free for the on the online for them to go on and see it anyway. So it's an easy place for them to still see it. If we did not have that, it would be that they would have to go to the website of the town or wherever to find it. I really feel like the move is maybe we start talking about it, but right now it's imperative that we look at this as let's respect those older people that apparently are still older than some of us. And let's honor them with allowing them to sit down with that cup of coffee and read those minutes or whatever else they need to read. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to pass on some information that some newspaper friends of mine have shared with me that when it regards to the electronic versions of this, apparently the Wyoming Press Association maintains a free website that includes all public notices that are published in the state newspapers, and it is searchable and is free. So that is a service provided by the Wyoming Press Association. Another fact that most of the newspapers, I can't say all of them, do post their public notices outside of their paywall so they can be reviewed free on their websites. So just want, this is information that was passed on to me. I can't verify it, but was passed on to me by some newspaper friends of mine. Thank you.
Ready for the question? Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've listened to the debate on this and I haven't said much about it. I've listened with interest. I remember I was a county commissioner over about 16 years ago or a little bit more. And I remember talking about this issue back then. And we'd look at the notice requirement, the bills from the newspaper that we received, we were publishing our notices and remember thinking about that and having discussions with my fellow commissioners about how we could better utilize this money elsewhere and what we could do with it. And even though it may not be oftentimes very large in the context of your entire budget, nevertheless, my experience in our budget was it didn't take a lot to make a big difference in our budget. It was stretched very, very tight as we tried to accomplish all the necessary and required services, as well as those that weren't not necessarily required in our county. And so I understand that. The other thing that has always this is not aimed at any member in this body, but it was particularly some emails I got before I came down here about this specific bill. And I was disturbed to me that this bill has become an argument about supporting our newspapers in local communities and this effect. And to me, that's not the right argument. It's not the right consideration. This is about notice. And with all due respect to those who love the newspaper, I love newspapers. I love reading the newspaper. Sometimes I wish there's more news and less advertisement, but I understand, a guy or a gal's got to make a living. So I understand that. But I hope that as we consider this, that your vote is not about whether or not this money goes to support newspapers. or, there's no question about how important newspapers are to our local communities. I really hope that you focus your vote on this, whether you vote aye or no. I hope it's because it's about the notice to the citizens of the state about what's happening in government and not about the financial viability of papers. I understand that's an important issue. We all know what's happened in the last decade and a half with newsprint and that, but this is really an issue about notice. And I hope that we focus on that and not about whether the financial health or ill health of our respective and community newspapers. It's about notice to our citizens. And I hope that whether you vote aye or no, I hope that that's what your vote is based on. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Landon.
Mr. President, that is exactly it. And that's precisely why I've struggled along with this bill ever since we had it in committee. And I told you on the floor during committee of the whole that I had indicated then that I wanted to allow this bill to come to the Wyoming Senate so we could have a good debate about it. You know what I hearken back to, Mr. President, is the 2 years that we spent on corporations and how hard we worked. Boy, what a great committee. We came to you and you helped us to pass important sunshine laws. We really worked at this freedom of information thing, and we really concentrated on making sure that our constituents out there knew what was going on. And I woke up this morning, I thought, I really hate to back up on that. It just feels like to me that the little bit that we invest in making sure that it's getting out to every one of our constituents, not just our young people that read their paper off of this, but to everyone. I'm not quite there with the notion that we pull the funding that makes sure that we get information out to our public, Mr. President. So that's where I am today, and that's the way I will vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ready for the question? Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the bill, I think it's going back to the notice issue. I think it would have helped the case and the cause and the argument of the locals and the towns and counties if they would have had their websites up to date with the minutes on there and show us what they could do. But if you go and look across the state right now at these county and city websites and local government websites, the information is sparse at best, outdated, oftentimes, sometimes non-existent yet. So I think they could have really showed us what they could do. And I don't think they're quite ready for that yet. And for that reason, and a few others that have already been elaborated on, I'm a no vote on this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready for the question? Discussion or question? Question being called. On Senate File 17, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Roll call on Senate File 17. Anderson.
Aye.
Aye. Baldwin. No. No. Beitman.
No.
No. Boner. No. Bouchard. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper.
No.
No. Driscoll.
No.
No. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy.
No.
No. Guru. No. Hicks.
No.
No. Hutchings. No. James. Aye. Kinsky.
Excuse me, no.
Kinsky, no. Cole. Aye. Cost.
No.
No. Landon. No. McEwen.
No.
No. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. No. Perkins. No. Rothfuss. No. Salazar.
No.
No. Schuler. No. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. No. Wasserberger. No. President Dockstetter.
Conflict.
Conflict. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 17, 9 aye, 20 no, 1 conflict.
Senate File 17, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 17 has failed to pass the Senate. Consideration of bills on general file. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, we are at that order of business, consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carried. Senator Cost, will you lead the Senate today?
Thank you, sir. Okay. Okay. The Committee of the Whole will please come to order.
Mr. Chairman. Back here, Mr. Chairman.
Where are you?
The other back here.
Back there,
Corner.
way over there. Yes, sir.
Privilege the floor for a minute.
You may.
Thank you. I'm going to address everybody real quick. Folks, we don't have a real long list of bills up there, and I may add a couple at lunchtime. Our anticipated adjournment is at 3:30 today, and I will gauge these bills at lunchtime, and we will leave when the board's done. I won't continue to add bills. So your expedience is appreciated, and let's everybody go home and have a good weekend. We've had a really good first week. Thank all of you for everything and expediency. Next week's budget week, get rested up over the weekend. I don't think that the speed's going to get any slower going forward. So thank you, everybody, for your good work. We've got a number of good bills to the other side. We'll get a bunch more next week. Great work. Thanks.
So when you gauge it, are you going to gauge it?
Thank you.
12 gauge, 16 gauge?
The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 80. The reading clerk will read the Senate file.
Senate File 80, Public Health Orders, Local and Legislative Oversight, an act relating to public health orders, sponsored by Senator McEwen, was referred to committee number 10, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Bouchard, Hutchings, and McEwen. No, Senators Baldwin and Furphy. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What's your pleasure?
I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 80 do pass. For the explanation, I turn it over to my neighbor here to the right, Senator McEwen.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We kind of have an opportunity here with this bill. Generally, we pass legislation that's restrictive or in one form or another takes away somebody's liberties or freedoms. This actually does the opposite. And in a sense, since we're all looking for revenue, it has the possibility of generating revenue also. It's an act relating to public health orders and imposing limitations on the declaration of public health emergencies. Poses requirements, limitations on state and county public health orders as specified, requires ratification of state and county public health orders, authorizing local oversight. The key point there is we're kind of powering down, let the people in the trenches make their own decisions on what they need to do, instead of us pretending we know better. So as we get into it, we're looking at oversight ratification. No public health orders shall be issued, or if a public health order is issued, there's a 48-hour requirement to get notification out to seek comment from the public. It requires or allows public comment through written
and electronic submissions. Within the time limit specified in this section, they have to have it published in 48 hours. It doesn't necessarily mean the order doesn't go into effect for 48 hours. It just requires the opportunity within 48 hours for our constituents to speak up on it. There's also a time limit in here. And what I really like about the bill is if there is a state health order put out, the county commission, county commissioners, city councils can literally opt out of it. It's their choice. They can decide if they have enough expertise to overrule what's being put down, or if they're not comfortable, they can follow it. None of the public health orders issued under this from the state level will be good for any longer than 30 days. We basically give the governor and the state health officer the ability to declare an emergency for 30 days. After that 30-day period, then it must come back to the legislation for ratification to continue on. The next paragraph in this bill, it took me a while to wrestle this one around, so I kind of want to explain what it's really saying. It almost appears to be more permissive, but it's really restrictive. The gist of what this language is saying is you can't game the system. You cannot take and issue a 30-day public health order and on the 28th day, issue another 30-day public health order, and on the 15th day, order another. I think y'all get my point, right? 30 days and you're done. And that's what this language does. We go to the next, and it requires the municipalities, the counties, cities, however it may be, are also required to allow notification and let people submit opinions within 48 hours. And they have to get the word out. Now, the counties and the city health orders, they will be valid for 15 days without ratification. Once again, there's a paragraph that pretty much mirrors the other paragraph that follows that one. On the 13th day, they can't issue another. It's got to come back to the legislature and be approved. I really like this bill, and I really like it because it gives our constituents the ability to affect what happens with mandates, what happens with health orders, vice leaving it out there. And as we spoke in the committee, I found it funny that the few people against this were all government employees. The people for this bill are all in the private sector. And if we think about what happened, who got affected during the last set of mandates? Who got shut down? I mean, we shut the school down, but we put them on Zoom and sent them a check. Whereas the small business owner was left to grapple with this and had little or no relief other than going to a county commission and saying, can you please send a variance in? And as I lived through on the 4th of July, that's quite a lengthy process. And it definitely, I would call it less than user friendly. So pretty much the last, as we start going through this, the health officers still have the requirement and the ability to investigate and control causes of epidemics and endemics. They just have the limitation. So if I think you need to shut your restaurant down, that can still be done. Or if I think you need to bring 10 people in to a bowling alley or no more at one time, you can do that for 30 days. But I think as we lived through COVID-19, we found out that at the end of about 30, 45 days, we pretty much knew what the effects were. And I'm going to tell you, I listened to everybody's statistical data. I own 2 grocery stores. At the outset of this, we did not require masks. We did not put tape on the floor. We did not put hand sanitizer every 2 inches. We put a sign on the door. It's your choice. You want to wear a mask, wear a mask. You don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. You don't want to come into these evil supermarkets that are not masked, don't. But it's your choice. And I will tell you, in the last over 12 months since this has started, we have probably serviced 75 to 80,000 customers. We have had 0 incidents of COVID with employees. We've had 0 incidents with customers that I know. And we go back to the constitutionality of Section 1 or Article 1, Section 38. You should be responsible to make your own decisions, and your local government should be able to respond and help you instead of waiting for a long drawn-out process based on, well, if I say that, I'll probably get in trouble. And with that, I stand for questions.
Any discussion? Yeah, Mr. French, Senator French.
Not so much your question, but I stand in support of Senate File 80. This is a good bill. And as the sponsor said, this gives the people of our state some say again in this. We've all heard it. The people up in my good county, Park County, they have just been livid over these public health orders. So this allows them the freedom of choice, gives them some responsibility. I mean, they give them the ability to tell their county commissioners, no, I don't like this, don't do this. So I stand in support. This is a good bill.
More discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Where'd that come from?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, the man in the mirror there. Go ahead, Senator Kinski.
I hope I'm clear-headed enough to offer some cogent comments, but the 30-day thing is something that I drafted towards the middle of the last session, and I decided not to proceed with it for a couple reasons. Mostly it's I don't know that I don't feel confident that interjecting 90 more politicians in the middle of it, and I don't know how many more politicians at the local level, is really going to improve the decision-making process in the middle of a pandemic. I do think I do think the legislative involvement is part of it for reasons that I'll talk about in a minute. But also I do want to thank the sponsor for his comments, which were very restrained. In my district, I had a number of people insisting that I become a co-sponsor, and I said, you know, I'm concerned that it may be taken as a criticism of personnel and the executive branch and the executive. So I do want to say this, our law does need updated, but I do think the governor has done the best that he can. And I think in an unprecedented crisis, with the information at the time and under the circumstances, and he has the job, I don't. And I'm glad I didn't have the job when the pandemic was coming down. There was a tremendous degree of uncertainty. And so I've heard folks criticize him, and I applaud him for doing difficult work under difficult circumstances. And I thank the sponsors for being restrained in their comments. So now back to the bill. I can see merit on the 30 days. There have been 4 Supreme Court decisions that I know of, 2 U.S. Supreme Court, 1 in Pennsylvania and 1 in Michigan. And I believe that there could be some amendments. I'm not the person to draft them. I'm not constitutional scholar enough that would be informed by those opinions. One of them, 2 of the U.S. Supreme Court decisions, one was in New York and one was in California, and they said that freedom of religion is a fundamental right. It, in any regulation, anything that infringes on that has to be subjected to what the lawyers call strict scrutiny analysis. And up until the Supreme Court said that, the standard being applied was based on a 1907 case out of Massachusetts, and it was what's called rational basis, which is just virtually no scrutiny at all. So I would like to see something in here that clarifies a little bit if there are regulations on gatherings that you have to really put a high level of scrutiny on fundamental constitutional rights. One of the decisions then also said that the law was so vague that it was just an impermissible delegation of legislative duty. And so the lawyers will recognize, that's the Chevron question. How much obligation does the legislature have to put detail in their laws, and how much do they delegate to the chief executive? And there really is very little definition as to what can and cannot be done, or what kind of standards should guide that decision making in the midst of a pandemic. And another one of the decisions said, well, business ordinarily, you scrutinize that with what's called the rational basis, the lowest level of scrutiny. And they said, but we're not talking about a regulation of how late you can stay open. We're talking about bankrupting people. And so they said they were going to subject it to a higher level of scrutiny, and struck down a number of regulations. And then finally, one of the decisions achieved much like this bill. It was an impermissible delegation bill as well. It said, it's one thing to say you're going to invoke an emergency for 30 days or 60 days. And it's another thing for it to be another 30, another 30, another 30, another 30. So I think the bill could be improved by putting some more rigorous definition in there, protections as to what are the standards of review if these things end up in court, which they did in other states, they didn't in Wyoming. What are the standards by which these regulations should be held to in litigation? And what are the standards that are to guide the executive in deciding, what kind of limits they impose? Because it's not complete laissez-faire. When you're in the middle of a pandemic, there is a role for government. It's our obligation as a legislative branch to flesh that out in legislation. And this is the vehicle to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
More discussion. Senator Bateman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for this bill. Our constituents and people from around the state have been waiting a very long time for this day to come. It restores checks and balances, and it restores the balance of power amongst our government. We've had a problem with co-equal branches of government in our state. We pride ourselves on being a part-time legislature, but we have a full-time executive. So when we're in town, things are good. We're humming along as co-equal branches of government. You have to give and take. We have our checks and balances. But when we leave town, which is almost the entire year, we're not here to help. And when the phone rings and people are worried about losing their business, they're worried about these possibly overreaching orders in their minds, it's a helpless feeling as their senator. There's nothing I can do when we're not in session. We can try to call a special session, but that's a very high bar. We can tell them, well, call the executive branch and voice your opinions. They did. They were ignored. We have given the executive a lot of power here in our current statute with these emergency orders. I think the good senator that spoke before me is right. This does need to be addressed. We have to come back and take a sober look at this amount of power that we've given the executive. I just think it's time for us to rein that in a little bit. These are reasonable limitations. I don't think anything we're asking for is unreasonable. We've given them the 30 days. I think it's great that we're including the locals on this issue as well, because every county, every location is different. They have different numbers right now. They have different situations. So on and for the bill, and I encourage support from my colleagues. Thank you.
Senator Bonner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to voice my support of this concept. And like the first speaker from Sheridan County pointed out, perhaps it does need some refinement. And certainly this is going to be a discussion that we're going to have for years to come. And so it's possible to pass a bill like this and still come back and review and continue to tweak the concept later. And I appreciate my other colleague from Sheridan County pointing out how conditions on the ground may be different, but we have different communities in this state. And I can tell you, I represent 2 counties. You think it'd be fairly similar, but one had a countywide, say, mask order before the statewide one did not. And I can tell you, at least anecdotally, it seems like there's a lot more compliance with that county mask order than there was with the state mask order. People are going to respond better. And at the end of the day, this is what these orders are about, getting the individuals throughout our state to modify their behavior in a way that's going to minimize risk from whatever health risk is out there. And that's best done with understanding the science of what the exact threat is, but also understanding where the people of the state are at and what's going to get them to that end goal in the most effective way possible. And when folks feel like they've had some meaningful input into that process, they're more likely to modify their behavior as a result. And so I think that's an important concept we need to keep in mind as we move forward. Certainly things have changed quite a bit in the past 100 years when was the last time we looked at these laws, that people have a lot more information available to them, obviously, than they did back then. And as a result, are going to be more engaged in questioning the orders and the nature of the virus. And we need to acknowledge that reality, whether you like it or not, that's the reality. So on support of the bill, certainly understand that we're going to probably continue to fine tune it as it goes through the process, but it's an important discussion we're going to have and we're going to continue it.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the bill, for all the reasons stated before, but also we have to find our way through this situation. And I think that's best done at a local level as we are going to emerge from this. We are going to be better for it. We are going to be stronger people. We are going to be more prepared in the future. And this bill is no criticism of anyone. It's just merely a policy decision about how we want to govern ourselves. It's about good government. And it's about that starting at the local level and working its way through elected officials. And so as we kind of get our hands back on the wheel here as the legislature and as county commissioners and as people that live in the community where our citizens are, the decisions aren't just coming from a community far away. It just makes a lot of sense to me, and I really appreciate the good senator bringing this legislation.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, first, let me say I agree with my colleague that I think our governor did handle this very well. You especially contrast the handling here in Wyoming with what went on in some of the other states. Frankly, he took the steps that were necessary, especially when we had a lot of uncertainty about what was going on. And then the attitude became, let's see, what can we do to allow people and businesses to do what they need to do safely, rather than let's just shut everything down we've seen in other states. And I think we're very fortunate to have been here in Wyoming during this pandemic and had the leadership that we did have. That being said, Mr. Chairman, let's look at this long term, because this is going into the statute as a permanent part of our laws. I think it will be very difficult to change it once it gets in. So we've got to say, are we doing the right thing long term? Mr. Chairman, we did have, and I've been reluctant to speak on health issues. As you know, I've moved on. I don't want to undercut my health chairman, but I did spend 28 years as the chairman of your health committee here. And we did a review of our existing laws in this area about 15 years ago, or so it's after 9/11, a few years after 9/11. And we frankly found that our laws were pretty good and would work. And what I'm going to ask the Senate is broaden your perspective, Mr. Chairman, broaden the perspective away from the specifics of the pandemic we are now starting, fortunately, to come to an end. Think what it might be in a future pandemic. And I will guarantee you two things, Mr. Chairman. There will be another pandemic. The last really serious one we had was the flu in 1918, when a new strain of the flu virus appeared and killed a lot of people. We've had some other things that have been called pandemics. And I guess you could say maybe the AIDS one was, but they weren't the kind of violently contagious stuff. Now, that's about 100-year interval. Maybe that will be the interval. Maybe the next one will be 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Who knows? We don't know. We don't govern. We can't. We were fortunate this time that although the virus was relatively contagious, and was more deadly, and I think statistics are absolutely clear that it was more deadly than the flu virus. Still, it was relatively mild compared to what you could get, compared to what the human race has experienced in the past. Mr. Chairman, we have seen much more dangerous plagues in the past. Europe had its Black Death at the end of the Middle Ages. That organism is currently present and endemic in Wyoming in the ground squirrel population. Every now and then we get a human case. Every now and then we've lost an individual that modern antibiotics happen to get that bug very nicely, if you get to it in time. Every now and then we have lost somebody to it. That one should evolve in unexpected ways. We could be in real trouble. Mr. Chairman, fortunately, we no longer have the smallpox virus among us. That's been eradicated. Now, there are a few stocks in very secure locations. The Centers for Disease Control has some. The Russians have some, I believe. There were weaponized versions that were much more contagious that were developed by the Soviets. One of the evils that communism was prepared to unleash on the world. We don't know that all of those have been destroyed. And smallpox is an orthopox vaccine, virus. There is cowpox, from which our smallpox vaccine was descended. Probably. You know, it's just a little unclear. There's a number of other diseases. Monkeypox is one. One of those evolves. That would be much more contagious and violently deadly. And that is a risk with all the organisms that are out there that could evolve. And we have seen over the course of human history a number of those organisms that did evolve to really hit the human population. It is my judgment that this bill, if it was law, when we eventually have a pandemic that is much worse than the one we're just finishing up. If we make this law, we will kill a lot of our descendants. The time delays, some of the due process requirements. One of the fundamental duties of our government is to protect us all against the kind of violent outbreak that we can have and we historically did have. And a number of our present laws were written by people who knew about that, who had the society had recent experience with some of those really deadly diseases. So I ask you in voting on this to think, do we want to take the risk that we will tie the hands of the people who are charged with protecting us all when that sort of thing happens? Mr. Chairman, I think the answer to that is no, we do not want to put something like this on the books. Second problem I have is frankly with the requirement for the executive branch when they exercise the functions we've given them, or our predecessors gave them by law to protect us. Do we want to have those second guessed by 90 citizen politicians? Mr. Chairman, as you all know, I have tremendous respect for this institution that we serve. I tell you, I have a tremendous feeling of awe about having been elected by the people to serve as their representative in the most successful form of government this planet has ever seen. But there are limitations to what we do well. And dealing with a crisis where you need to have firm and quick action is not one of the things we do well. We delegate that to the executive branch for good reason. So, Mr. Chairman, for both of those reasons, I know there's tremendous frustration with what's happened. Some of it, I think, is frankly an effort to shoot the messenger. The disease forced the society to do some things that were very unpleasant. And you can't haul the virus into court and hold it responsible. So we're shooting the messenger that said, look, to be safe, we have to do certain things. That's a mistake. But for all the fundamental reasons of the trouble I think we would get us into long term, I would urge the Senate to defeat this measure. Senator Cooper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak for just a second about a couple of things. The good senator from somewhere west of the goose egg brought up. I think he's very correct in saying that this law that's in effect right now got us through what was here. We didn't have near the catastrophe that some other states have had. And we survived this, and we're still surviving it. And partially because we are the people of Wyoming, and I applaud us for that. But we'd be remiss if we don't learn from what's gone on here in the last year. For the most part, the law worked very well. In my 5 counties, 4 of them It worked very well. The fifth one, we had a runaway. The county commissioner stepped up and took care of it. It took a little doing, and it may have cost one or two of them their jobs before it's over with, but they did what they had to do. And we moved forward. I'm not 100% sure that this bill is 100% ready to be passed in third reading. But when I look around this room, I see some of the brightest legal minds in probably the nation. And I'm not looking at Senator from Powell here. But we've got so much talent in this room. Wow. Some of the best people in the world are sitting right here. Let's take full advantage of what we have and our capabilities and the capabilities of our staff and take this good bill and make it an even better bill and incorporate it with what we have and do the right things for the people of Wyoming. I think this is a really great opportunity to learn from our experiences of the past year. Thank you, sir.
Just so you know, there's two of us from Powell. Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with the last colleague that we should make sure we at least look at what we have in front of us. And even if you don't like some of the language, let's fix it. Let's get it to where we have something. You know, the members of the public are looking around at what's happening all over the country. We have states that have rescinded their mask orders. They're wondering why we don't do something. And they see us in here without masks on. I mean, I just don't, I mean, we look at the things that some of you know the struggles I've had because of my phone, where people text me because they don't trust the government and what they've said on early treatment. I mean, I've had to tell people, how many days have you had this? You better go to the emergency room. Because our state government isn't telling people what to do, even when they know they have tested positive on a test. This isn't about just, I'm not trying to point fingers here. I'm saying that there has to be checks and balances. We just can't go on and on and on and follow bad advice. We have to start looking at things. Look, we all know that when this happened, there was a drastic turn that had to, and we all made it, right? We all said, let's do it. Let's shut it down. But now we're sitting here while other states are opening up and getting rid of their mask orders, and we still have one. There has to be balance of power. There has to be a legislature that can come back and say, wait a minute, maybe we need to do something else. I mean, and look, when you have people at the top that are making decisions and all the weight's on their shoulder, maybe we need to take the weight off of their shoulders. Maybe that's what this bill is about. Taking the weight off of a few people who have an incredible weight on their shoulder and maybe balancing that out. Maybe taking other looks at what, I mean, this isn't going to be, I don't think that this bill will, and the things that we're talking about, we're ever going to want to make the same, turn down that same road that we did before. I think what we're going to do here is now we're going to take a smarter look at how do we do this collectively. That's why we're elected. We're elected to help represent our people as well. So are the county commissioners. I mean, there was a lot of struggle where we had health officers that had all the power. They're not elected. It's the county commissioners that are elected. There again, it's us that are elected to come back when the people are asking us, what are we going to do? Because you realize they're not getting those answers now when they see other states doing something different. And I think it's time we just take a good look, keep this bill going. Let's get our minds on it. Let's do something for the people. Thank you.
Senator Hutching.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've enjoyed the debate. And there's an old proverb that says, let me get that up. I'm sorry, it kind of slipped as I was standing up. Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And I think we can see with this bill and with the multitude of the members that have stood up for or against this bill, that each of us have an idea or a thought that we can share with the others to help support or help each of our communities. One of the things I would like to say to disagree with the good senator from Natrona County is that our Constitution gives the legislature, not the governor, the duty to protect and promote the health and morality of the people in Article 7, Section 20. As the health and morality of the people are essential to their well-being and to the peace and permanence of the state, it shall be the duty of the legislature to protect and promote these vital interests, etc. So it is our job. And I think we would do it well. We are the lawmakers, we've been elected. And with that, I'm on and for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you. And I appreciate we're talking at a high level. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to get actually into the specifics of the bill. I do have a number of questions about how it works and how it'll work as a practical matter. I think we have learned a number of things over the last few months as we've dealt with the pandemic. We've had, I remember getting home from about 4 days after out of the hospital with post-COVID pneumonia, getting a call from a constituent, or not a constituent of mine, but a resident of the state, somebody, your constituents, who called to tell me about that the pandemic was a hoax. It was just the flu, that this was just a grab by big pharma, or a hoax by big pharma to make millions of dollars. And someone who lost their father to COVID over the summer and had just gotten out of the hospital, probably quite lucky to just be lucky to have gotten out of the hospital at all. It was an interesting conversation, but so I understand. We have people over the map, and we do that. And I will admit, it is our job to protect and to promote the health and welfare of the citizens of the state of Wyoming. And how do we do that? We pass laws that are executed by the governor and his staff and the other members and our various political subdivisions to execute those orders and to do so to the best of their ability. But as we go into the bill, I've got a couple questions, and I'm trying to figure out how this works as a practical matter. So if we go to page 2, and go basically to this new section in 35(1)(245), and we go down through it. Subsection A, we've got this 48 hours, so basically I think that's how I envision this working. And I'm just trying to get confirmation about this and have some discussion and thought about how this might work in practicality. So the public health order apparently is going to be able to be issued under the law stated there, but they've got to be provided that notice within 48 hours. On the surface, I think that's a good idea. It's nice to be able to know if you're going to be closed down, or you need a little bit of time to adjust it. I think that, quite frankly, I think that some of our public schools, they closed down a year ago, could have used, in some cases, a little bit, maybe even a little bit more than 48 hours notice, but I get that. The other side of that, though, I have is, if we go to, we can argue about whether or not, when the President of the United States shut down the flights from China last year, if that was appropriate or not appropriate. But as an example of that, and I know that our governor doesn't have a chance to run out flights, but we could have flights in and out of Wyoming, probably shut down, maybe. You could, in some places, they actually stationed high patrol at borders as the people came over the borders to do that. And so when you get to a pandemic that, while this one has been quite deadly, we're now at over 500,000 people nationwide that have passed away from this. And I, along with interviews, we've had a good friend and colleague in the other body pass away from this, as did his brother. So as you get down this, 48 hours also gives the chance for, it's nice to have that notice, but their side of it gives a chance for something, whether even not nefarious, but just out of panic or other things, for there to be some expansion of this and a further delivery of this, of whatever contagion of pandemic might be. What if it's not COVID? What if it's bubonic plague? What if it's something more, even more deadly than that? There are lots of plenty terrible diseases in the country. So was there any discussion or thought about the process about what happens if 48 hours ends up being too late to do some good in some instances? If someone wants to panic or they flee because they're concerned about an outbreak in their area and they flee, and in that 48 hours they can convey that contagion in many, many places. So just some consideration about the 48 hours, and I understand that. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just, as you weigh these things, it's always a weight of liberty and interests and those things against in some cases real threats to public safety. I wondered how that will work. The next one is when you go down to B, when you have this public health order. I get my so you've got B. I think I understand that. I think that's probably I understand, and I'm fully supportive. I'd like this idea where public health officers become advisors to elected officials, and we can rely on elected officials to follow the science, or whatever term we want to put on that. That it's become a trite phrase lately. I get that, and I appreciate that, and I'm fully supportive of that. If we go down further, if we get into the next section, the bottom of 3 and to the top of that, we talk about the 48 hours and things like that. One of the things I was very interested in, though, was this fact that if the governor issues a health order, that this 30 days, if we go into D, which is on page 3, is it there? Anyway, it's where the legislature approves that. And so if we've got 30 days to meet as a special session of the legislature to ratify that. And just our experiences in the last year to do that, I'm concerned about that time limit. It's not necessarily easy or to get the legislature together in 30 days, particularly under some of the provisions in our Constitution. And I think we need to, quite frankly, to actually do that and do successfully, there's potential that it might require a constitutional, to be clearly within the confines of the Constitution, to be within that. If the governor doesn't call us into special session, it creates a whole new issue with respect of how we call ourselves in the special session, because we may not be able to meet here. And so we were kind of skirting around that and doing that, but the governor did call us into special session, so we didn't have to worry about that last year. But to call ourselves into special session, it takes the members of both houses, but when you look at the Constitution, it may very well, depending on your interpretation, may require us to meet here. That may not be possible for the very reasons, travel restrictions or other things. Again, if we've got outbreaks in one part of the state, another part of the state, it may not be possible necessarily to meet here. If we have a quorum here, we may be able to do it like we're doing it today with virtual, but there's some practical considerations about this. And so I'm concerned about the 30 days, and I'm wondering where that came from, and if there was some thought process about that. Maybe I think virtually it might be possible to meet within 30 days, but it may not necessarily be effective, because I think there's some constitutional restrictions that potentially play into that if the governor and the legislature are not necessarily on the same page. And so as we go about, we go through there, very, very supportive. I think it's an important concept. It's always important. I know the governor is very interested in having a review of this to find out what are our lessons that we've learned. There's a lot of things, not just about public health, but just the administration of government in general through this process. And so it's not just this, but there's a review about that. So it's very important that we do this. But I do have some concerns about this bill and the practical nature of it and how it applies in a real life situation. And it's one thing to have, I understand the sentiment. I have many of the same sentiments myself, but having, like many of you, been around government a while and actually served at the county level, if we're going to have other types of input and kind of holds where all of a sudden this stuff vanishes if certain things don't happen with a period of time. I'm just trying to get a grasp on this, and maybe just if we have a little bit longer times, or we change those deadlines, or we put some ability, some maneuverability within those under certain circumstances, doing that. And it's hard to do that, as we run through the time pressures of this session. But this is something we can't afford to get wrong either. We need to get it right. And so, thank you, Mr. President. Look forward to Mr. Chairman, look forward to the continued discussion.
Mr. Driscoll, Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee to whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
You've heard the good senator. What's your, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Sent you a picture. Hey, your phone. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Oh, looked right past you, Senator Nethercott. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
Please do.
Good senators, we have with us up in the gallery straight in front of you, two wonderful Laramie County constituents who are the epitome of public service and giving back. And I would just like to give them a warm Senate welcome. Mick and his wife, Margie Finnegan, welcome to the Wyoming Senate.
Welcome to the Senate. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Oh, do we have another announcement? No. Okay. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move we stand recessed until 2 p.m. Let's let the Appropriations Committee hit the lunch line first. They've got a meeting. If they want to catch them, let's let them hit it first.
Announcements. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 2, Reach Right Harder, will meet in about 15 minutes in room E301 to take consideration of the following bills. Senate File 118, Federal Emergency COVID-19 Relief Funding. Senate File 136, Required Public Service Commission consideration. And looking at this, I think we'll lay back Senate File 121 till Monday. But anyway, thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Wasberger, did you have an announcement?
Mr. President, if you would recognize Senator Anderson, he will do the announcement.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, your favorite committee, Minerals number 9, will meet today at 15 minutes after this noon recess, which will be about 12:30 in Capitol Extension Room W004 and online. And we will hear the continuation of SJ 002, Convention of States. We'll hear Senate File 99, Unfair Employment Practices, Off-Site Lawful Activities. Senate File 111, School of Energy Resources, Budget Submittal. Senate File 113, Business Ready Communities Amendments, and Senate Joint Resolution 3, Federal Suspension and Orders on Oil and Gas Production. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quickly, I just wanted to give some advance notice that your Senate Transportation Committee, upon adjournment Monday, will take up Senate File 73. That's the I-80 tolling bill, and that will be taken up on Monday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for the heads up. Okay, further announcements? No further announcements. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.